Under the gray sky of a cold April morning, several people slowly make their way down into a valley, surrounded by jagged black cliffs. Among them is Kintpuash, leader of the Modocs, who bears the weight of an inevitable choice between preserving peace and meeting the demands of his warriors. The party sit around a small campfire, staring intently at one another's faces, the silence broken only by the howling of the cold wind. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how 53 warriors were able to hold off hundreds of US soldiers thanks to natural cover and tunnels. What I'm about to show you has long remained a little-known chapter of history, rarely discussed in official accounts. The secret to the Modocs' incredible resistance lies not in magic, but in their ingenious use of the surrounding terrain and their deep understanding of nature. You will see a completely unique approach to defensive tactics that transformed barren lava fields into an impregnable fortress for regular troops. This information will radically change your perception of the capabilities of a small group of people united by a common goal: survival on their native land. Many facts about this siege were hidden behind the glossy image of successful expansion into new territories, but now it's time to reveal the historical reality. In this video, we'll take a detailed look at the unique terrain of Northern California, which became the indigenous people's greatest ally in this unequal struggle. We'll trace the complex journey of Kintpuash, who tried until the very last moment to find a diplomatic solution to the looming catastrophe. You'll understand why standard military tactics proved utterly useless amid the tangled lava tubes and jagged basalt ridges. We'll reveal the details of covert movements, cunning ambushes in thick fog, and the tragic negotiations that became the turning point of the entire conflict. Every decision made by the leaders and every feature of the landscape will come together to form a complete picture of one of the most extraordinary campaigns of the 19th century. The greatest fortress of the 19th century was built not by engineers, as is commonly believed, but by nature itself. The story of this unprecedented confrontation begins with deep disappointment and the Modocs' forced decision to leave foreign lands. In the mid-19th century, American officials relocated them to a reservation on the lands of the Klamath tribe, which had historically been considered their rivals. Life in their new home quickly became unbearable due to constant conflicts, a lack of resources, and the local authorities' disregard for their problems. The Modoc leader, Kintpuash, made the fateful decision to lead his people back to the shores of their native Lake Tool. Kintpuash was a diplomatic man who sincerely sought peaceful coexistence with the settlers. He often traded with them, studied their customs, and even earned the nickname Captain Jack from them. His primary goal always remained ensuring a peaceful and prosperous life for his community on their ancestral lands. However, constant pressure from officials and threats of forcible return to the reservation left him little room to maneuver. In the fall of 1872, the situation reached a boiling point when an armed detachment of the regular army approached their encampment to carry out a forced eviction. The clash at Lost River became the spark that ignited a long and grueling conflict. After a brief skirmish, the Modoc realized that remaining in the open meant certain defeat at the hands of a superior enemy force. The community began a hasty retreat southward, heading for the most inhospitable and mysterious place in their region. Their destination was the vast lava fields formed millennia ago, following massive volcanic eruptions. It was there that Kintpuash hoped to find a safe haven for the families and time to resume peace negotiations. The leadership structure within the Modoc community differed greatly from the familiar military hierarchy, which created unique conditions for decision-making. Kintpuash did not have absolute power and could not simply issue orders that demanded unquestioning obedience. His authority rested on his wisdom, his ability to persuade, and his skill in finding compromises between different groups within the tribe. He was always accompanied by other influential figures, such as the spiritual leader Curly Doctor, who held more radical views. Every important decision was discussed at a council by the campfire, where every full-fledged warrior could voice his opinion. At that time, the American command began concentrating significant forces along the borders of the lava fields. The generals were absolutely confident of a swift and successful conclusion to the campaign against the small group of resistors. They were accustomed to operating in open terrain, where drill training and concentrated rifle fire determined the outcome of any encounter. None of the officers even imagined the insurmountable difficulties they would face among the basalt cliffs. Military logic refused to recognize the landscape as an equal participant in the coming conflict. The Modocs closely watched the troops' movements from high rocky ridges, remaining completely unnoticed. They counted about 400 soldiers who were slowly setting up their tent camps on the approaches to their hideout. Against this formidable force, Kintpuash had only 53 armed warriors, many of whom had to make do with outdated rifles. Such overwhelming numerical superiority could have broken the spirit of any people. But the Modocs remained calm and focused. They believed in the power of stone and in their ability to become invisible against the backdrop of their native land. Preparations for the defense were carried out day and night without the slightest noise, so as not to reveal the exact location of the main camp. The warriors reinforced natural ramparts with stones, creating reliable firing positions with a wide field of view. The women wove sturdy ropes from plant fibers to move quickly between the cave levels. Every member of the community understood their role and acted with remarkable coordination, defending their right to exist. A heavy sense of anticipation hung in the air as they awaited the first move by the U.S. regular army. This situation became a true test of resilience for Kintpuash and his people. They had to prove that strength of spirit and knowledge of nature could compensate for their lack of numbers and firepower. The story was just beginning to unfold its dramatic plot against the backdrop of Northern California's rugged landscapes. I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think of Kintpuash's decision to lead his people into such harsh conditions in order to preserve their independence? Please share your thoughts in the comments. What unfolded in the shadow of the giant boulders would forever change the U.S. military strategy. The terrain of the lava fields was a chaotic jumble of solidified magma, crisscrossed by deep cracks and sinkholes. The surface was covered with sharp basalt rocks that easily cut through the soldiers' leather boots after just a few hours of walking. There were no smooth roads here, nor any clear landmarks, only an endless stone labyrinth. Even the bright sunlight did little to help spot danger, as the black rocks swallowed shadows and distorted perspective. The main feature of this place was a dense network of underground lava tubes, formed by the uneven cooling of volcanic rock. These natural tunnels stretched for many hundreds of meters, connecting various sections of the wasteland with one another. The Modoc knew the location of every entrance and exit perfectly, using them as safe transportation routes. A warrior could descend underground at one point and appear completely unexpectedly deep behind enemy lines. For U.S. Army soldiers, this hidden logistics network remained an invisible and utterly incomprehensible mystery. Kintpuash established his main camp, which would later be called the Citadel, in the most impregnable section of this terrain. The site was surrounded by natural moats and high crenellated walls, resembling the bastions of a medieval castle. The approaches to the camp consisted of narrow, winding corridors, where it was impossible to form ranks or move as a group. Any attacker was forced to walk at full height across open terrain, becoming an ideal target for the defenders. The Modocs themselves could observe and fire through narrow slits between the monolithic boulders. In addition to providing defense, the lava tubes solved the most critical problem of survival in the desert. Deep underground, in certain caves, pure, ice-cold water accumulated, protected from evaporation under the scorching sun. Kintpuash carefully guarded these sources, realizing that water was the key to a successful defense. The women of the community regularly descended into the darkness of the caves to replenish supplies without the risk of being spotted. The U.S. Army, by contrast, was forced to transport water from afar every day, stretching its supply lines. The sharp basalt rocks also served as an excellent means of camouflage for the indigenous people. Warriors rubbed gray volcanic dust onto their skin and clothing to blend completely into the surrounding landscape. When a Modoc warrior stood motionless among the rocks, he was indistinguishable from an ordinary boulder, even at close range. Soldiers constantly complained that they had to shoot at mirages and ghosts rather than real people. This perfect camouflage turned every meter of the lava fields into a zone of constant, invisible tension. Army command attempted to map the lava fields, but all the topographers' efforts proved futile. From a bird's-eye view, the terrain appeared flat, concealing the true depth of the crevices and caves. Time and again, officers sent patrols into the sea of rock, and many of them returned completely disoriented. The lack of precise knowledge of the terrain made it impossible to plan conventional military operations. The generals were forced to act blindly, relying solely on the brute strength of their soldiers. The region's climatic conditions posed an additional barrier for the regular army during the winter months. Strong, biting winds swept right through the soldiers' open encampments, bringing frostbite and disease in their wake. Meanwhile, the Modocs were in cozy underground shelters where the temperature remained stable. They built small fires from dry wormwood, the smoke from which dissipated through intricate systems of crevices. The difference in living conditions between the two sides became increasingly evident with each passing day of the siege. The geography of the lava fields proved to be Kintpuash's most powerful ally in this confrontation. The rocks, tunnels, and fog worked better than any man-made fortress, leveling the playing field between 53 warriors and hundreds of soldiers. This region has become a living testament to how an understanding of nature triumphs over blind military might. Are you ready to discover exactly how the Modocs have built their lives within these impregnable cliffs? In the next chapter, I'll reveal the architectural secrets of the citadel, which amaze the imagination with their ingenuity. What I am about to show you has long been studied by military strategists as the unattainable ideal of defensive architecture. The citadel of Kintpuash was a masterpiece of integrating human life into the harsh natural environment of the rocky desert. At the heart of the camp lay a spacious circular hollow, securely enclosed on all sides by high cliffs of volcanic rock. Here stood the main dwellings, woven from wormwood branches and covered with animal hides to retain heat during the long nights. This central area allowed people to socialize freely, prepare food, and raise their children without fear of being seen. The Modoc dwellings were semi-subterranean, providing additional protection from the biting winter winds. People dug shallow, round pits directly into the layer of volcanic ash that had accumulated between the rocks. A framework of sturdy shrub branches formed a dome-like structure capable of withstanding strong gusts of wind. Inside these dwellings, a comfortable microclimate was always maintained, allowing families to peacefully weather the long nights of the siege. The simplicity of the design made it possible to quickly repair the dwellings in the event of accidental rockfalls. The organization of the citadel's defenses was remarkable for its mathematical precision and the depth of detail in every aspect. Kintpuash, together with the senior warriors, established several concentric defensive lines around the central camp. The outer ring was lined with observation posts, concealed in natural niches at the highest points of the terrain. From there, a magnificent view stretched for many miles in all directions, allowing them to spot any movement of soldiers. Signals between the posts were transmitted using subtle sounds that mimicked the cries of night birds or the rustling of the wind. The inner defensive ring consisted of skillfully equipped firing positions connected by hidden trenches. The warriors piled additional stones around natural embrasures, leaving only tiny gaps for the barrels of their rifles. Each such position had safe retreat routes, leading deeper into the lava labyrinth if enemy pressure became critical. No soldier could approach these positions unnoticed due to the complex system of intersecting firing sectors. The architecture of the fortifications ruled out the possibility of a sudden breakthrough by American troops into the camp. A vital part of the infrastructure was the food storage system, distributed among various caves. The women carefully sorted dried meat, edible roots, and dried berries, hiding them in dry, cool crevices. This distribution ensured that a stray army shell would not destroy the community's entire supply at once. Careful inventory tracking allowed Kintpuash to plan the camp's life many months in advance, avoiding panic and starvation. Calm within the community depended directly on the confidence in the future that these storage sites provided. Despite the harsh conditions of the siege, the Modocs continued to maintain their customary way of life. In the evening hours, when the cannon fire subsided, quiet tales of ancient heroes and nature spirits echoed through the deep caves. The elders passed on their life experiences to the young, preserving the unbroken thread of their people's traditions. This internal cultural unity served as a powerful source of moral support for every member of the community. They were defending not just a piece of lifeless rock, they were defending their way of life and their right to be themselves. One of the most challenging aspects of life in the citadel was maintaining hygiene and order. The Modocs strictly monitored the cleanliness of their water sources, preventing them from being contaminated by household waste. Ashes from campfires were used for household purposes, and all waste was carefully disposed of in deep crevices in the rock. This iron discipline prevented outbreaks of infection that could have destroyed the community faster than army bullets. The order in the camp reflected a high degree of self-organization and mutual respect among the people. Every detail of daily life in the lava fields bore witness to the Modocs' incredible resourcefulness and practical ingenuity. They transformed dead rock into a source of life, and a barren desert into an impregnable fortress. This chapter of their history demonstrates how a close connection with nature helps people overcome even the most hopeless circumstances. Their architectural genius allowed a small group to hold out against a massive military machine for many months. But ahead of them lay their first serious test: battle in this stone jungle. The citadel became a true marvel of fortification, built without a single blueprint or engineering tool. It proved its effectiveness by serving as a safe haven for people driven into a corner by circumstances. The next step in our story will be the day the U.S. Army decided to test the strength of these stone walls. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the first major offensive began and why it ended in complete failure. This episode will forever go down in history books as an example of the perfect defense. What happens when hundreds of armed soldiers try to storm an invisible enemy? In mid-January 1873, the American command decided to take active measures to crush the resistance with a single powerful blow. The generals devised a plan that seemed flawless to them: to encircle the citadel with a continuous ring of troops and slowly tighten the noose. About 400 soldiers, armed with modern rifles and supported by light artillery, took part in the operation. The army leadership was so confident of success that it had already prepared reports on the victorious conclusion of the campaign. The Modoc, however, felt completely at ease in the fog, navigating by memory and barely discernible landmarks. They moved silently through lava tubes, emerging to the surface right in front of the advancing enemy lines. Shots rang out from nowhere, striking soldiers and sowing genuine panic among them. The flashes of gunfire in the thick haze looked like will-o'-the-wisps that were impossible to catch or track. Kintpuash's warriors made no attempt to hold their positions. They attacked and vanished into the fog before the soldiers had a chance to return fire. Officers tried in vain to regain control of the situation, issuing orders that were lost in the acoustic traps created by the terrain. Artillery crews fired at random, as the spotters could not see the results of their hits through the thick white veil. Shells exploded against the basalt cliffs, raining down additional showers of stone fragments on the soldiers. Every advance came at an enormous cost to the army, and morale plummeted with every passing minute of the battle. The U.S. military machine faced an enemy that used nature itself as its primary weapon. Kintpuash commanded the defense with icy composure, relaying signals through his trusted messengers. He forbade the warriors from wasting ammunition, ordering them to fire only when they were absolutely certain of a hit. This strict conservation of ammunition was one of the reasons why 53 men were able to hold off the advance for so long. Each warrior operated as an autonomous combat unit, clearly understanding his sector of responsibility. The Modoc's cohesion and iron discipline stood in stark contrast to the chaos reigning among the ranks of the advancing soldiers. By midday, the American command realized just how dire their situation was within the stone labyrinth. The troops had suffered significant losses without ever seeing a single enemy soldier during the entire assault. Evacuating the wounded over the jagged cliffs became a grueling ordeal in itself for the medical teams. The soldiers were physically exhausted, frozen, and had completely lost the will to continue the senseless assault on an invisible fortress. The officers were forced to order a retreat to avoid the complete rout of their units. For the Modocs, this victory was a powerful affirmation of their righteousness and fortitude. They had managed to protect their families and their home, relying solely on their own bravery and knowledge of the rocks. However, Kintpuash harbored no illusions about the future, realizing that the army would return with renewed strength. He used the respite to repair the fortifications and replenish supplies with captured weapons and ammunition. The leader knew that the real test of endurance was yet to come, when emotions within the tribe would begin to take precedence over cold calculation. The first assault ended in a humiliating defeat for the U.S. Army and a loss of the initiative. 53 warriors proved that the stone desert could become an insurmountable barrier for regular troops. In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly how the Modocs used thick fog to set up impenetrable ambushes. We'll examine the tactical techniques that allowed them to remain completely invisible during battle. This in-depth look will help you better understand the genius of their military strategy. The main secret lies in their incredible mastery of close combat. The fog in the lava fields was not merely a weather phenomenon. It became a tangible ally of the Modocs. When the moist air from Lake Tell collided with the cold rocks, a dense milky veil formed. Visibility dropped to critical levels, making sound the only guide for the advancing troops. soldiers lost visual contact with their neighbors in the chain, which instantly shattered their psychological confidence. The tactic involved making instant contact with the enemy and retreating just as swiftly to new positions. After firing one or two well-aimed shots, a soldier would immediately shift to the side or dive into a lava tube. By the time the soldiers began firing in the direction of the flash, no one was there anymore, only empty rocks. This game of cat and mouse drove army units to a state of extreme nervous exhaustion. Officers described these encounters as a battle against disembodied ghosts that materialized out of thin air. One of the most effective traps was the use of false sound signals that the Modocs emitted from safe cover. By imitating the crackling of breaking branches or the sound of crumbling rocks, they forced soldiers to turn their backs on the real threat. When an enemy unit changed direction, it often found itself directly in the line of fire of another group of warriors. Coordinating such actions in conditions of zero visibility required the deepest mutual understanding among the defenders. It was the highest manifestation of collective combat intelligence, multiplied by knowledge of the terrain. The Modoc also successfully employed the tactic of flanking with small groups of 2 or 3 men. While the main line of defense drew the soldiers' attention with sporadic gunfire, the flanking group silently made its way into the rear. The appearance of the enemy behind them caused panic even among the most experienced and battle-hardened army veterans. In the thick fog, soldiers could not gauge the actual number of attackers, often mistaking 3 warriors for a large detachment. Fear multiplied the enemy's strength many times over in the eyes of the American military. These fog-shrouded ambushes allowed the Modocs not only to inflict damage on the enemy, but also to capture valuable spoils. Rifles, ammunition pouches, and warm blankets abandoned in panic were quickly gathered and transported to the citadel. These resources were vital for continuing the defense and sustaining the community's forces during the winter. The U.S. Army, unwittingly, became the main supplier of equipment to its enemies. Every trophy reinforced Kintpuash's confidence that his strategy was working effectively. Officers tried to counter the ambushes by forming the soldiers into tight squares, but the terrain made it impossible to maintain such a formation. The men constantly stumbled, breaking ranks, and once again became vulnerable to pinpoint attacks from invisible archers. The fog leveled the playing field, depriving the army of its main advantages: concentrated rifle fire and artillery support. Under these conditions, the outcome of the battle was decided by each individual's personal qualities: alertness, reaction speed, and knowledge of the terrain. And in this regard, the warriors of the lava fields held an undeniable advantage. The fog lifted, leaving behind only the army's bitter realization of its own helplessness. The Modocs retreated once more to their caves, preserving their men and strengthening their defenses. In the next chapter, you'll learn about the internal conflicts the Modoc leader faced during this time. We'll shift from military tactics to the complex political decisions that determine the fate of an entire people. Kintpuash was about to face his toughest test yet: incredible pressure from his own allies. Kintpuash never wanted this war. His heart yearned for peace and a quiet life for his community. Deep within the citadel, he constantly pondered options for a diplomatic resolution to the conflict with the American command. He understood that an endless siege would lead to the inevitable depletion of resources and his people suffering from starvation. Every morning, the leader woke up thinking about how to end the conflict and return his people to their homeland. At that time, the American command sent a peace commission led by General Edward Canby. The general was a respected military officer who was also seeking ways to end the siege without further clashes. Kintpuash seized this opportunity, agreeing to a series of meetings on neutral ground between the camps. He sincerely believed he could negotiate the creation of a separate reservation for the Modocs on the shores of Lake Tool. A complex process of negotiations began, in which every word carried weight and could lead to either peace or disaster. However, General Canby was bound by strict instructions from Washington that left no room for compromise. The only condition was the Modocs' complete submission and their return to the hated reservation with the Klamath tribe. Kintpuash repeatedly rejected these demands, knowing that his people would never agree to such humiliating terms. The diplomatic impasse became increasingly apparent with each new meeting under the gray sky of the wasteland. Tension around the peace tent grew, fueled by mistrust and mutual suspicion. Inside the citadel, a radical faction began openly challenging Kintpuash's authority, accusing him of being too lenient, Hooker Jim and his supporters began demanding extreme measures to derail the peace process once and for all. They devised a plan to physically eliminate the members of the American Peace Commission, including General Kenby himself. According to their logic, the loss of the Army's leaders would force the soldiers to retreat and admit defeat in this grueling campaign. This proposal shocked Kintpuash, as it violated all laws of honor and diplomacy. The leader tried to dissuade the Hutheads from taking this insane step, which would destroy any hope for peace forever. He argued that eliminating the negotiators would provoke the fury of the entire nation and lead to disaster for the Modocs. The arguments around the nighttime campfires grew increasingly heated, threatening to escalate into an internal split within the camp. Kintpuash's authority hung by a thread when the radicals directly challenged him, questioning his courage. He was forced to make the most terrifying choice of his life: lose control of his people, or resort to extreme measures. The pressure of the situation and his responsibility for the community's unity forced the leader to yield to the radicals' demands. To preserve unity and prevent conflict within the tribe, he agreed to personally lead the operation. It was a decision that contradicted all his principles, but he considered it the lesser evil for his people. Kintpuash understood that he was closing off his own path to the future, but his personal fate no longer mattered. He prepared for a confrontation that would forever block the path to peaceful coexistence. The leader's tragedy lay in the fact that his desire for peace had led to the most hopeless scenario. Kintpuash took this step so that his people would not plunge into the abyss without him. In the next chapter, you will learn how that fateful meeting in the peace tent unfolded. We'll examine in detail the events of that day, which turned the entire course of the historical campaign on its head. That moment became the point of no return for all parties to the conflict. On the eve of the fateful negotiations, an oppressive atmosphere reigned in the citadel, steeped in anxiety and a sense of impending doom. The Council of Elders gathered in the deepest cave to discuss their plan of action one last time. The light of the campfire illuminated the grim faces of people who understood the historic significance of the moment. The silence was broken only by the crackling of burning branches as the warriors prepared to present their final arguments. As a sign of his contempt for the leader's hesitation, one of the radicals threw women's clothing at Kintpuash's feet. It was a terrible insult, implying an accusation of cowardice and an inability to protect his people. In Modoc culture, such a gesture demanded an immediate response and a demonstration of masculine strength and resolve. Kintpuash silently brushed aside the garments and rose, his gaze heavy and full of hidden pain. He accepted the challenge, agreeing to take responsibility for carrying out the terrible plan to prove his loyalty to the tribe. This decision was an act of self-sacrifice, an attempt to hold together a crumbling community at the cost of his own honor. He knew that this act would destroy his reputation as a diplomat and forever make him an outcast among the Americans. But for Kintpuash, preserving the Modoc's internal unity was more important than his own historical legacy. He began assigning roles among the warriors who were to accompany him to tomorrow's meeting with the general. Every move was carefully calculated. Every detail of the plan was discussed with cold, grim deliberation. That night, few slept in the lava caves. The people understood that tomorrow their world would change forever. The women quietly gathered their belongings, preparing for a possible emergency retreat into the deepest parts of the tunnels. The warriors cleaned their weapons and hid their short revolvers under their clothes, checking that the mechanisms were reliable. The air was thick with the smell of ash and cold stone, reflecting the harshness of the ordeal ahead. Time seemed to slow down, stretching out the agonizing hours of waiting before the inevitable climax of the drama. On the morning of April 11th, Kintpuash left the citadel, accompanied by several armed comrades. They moved along narrow paths between the cliffs, heading toward neutral territory, where the negotiators' tent stood. The leader walked ahead. His steps were firm, but a weight as heavy as a massive basalt boulder lay on his heart. He gazed upon his native landscapes for the last time, with the calm gaze of a man whose fate was already sealed. Ahead of him waited representatives of the American command, naively believing in the power of diplomatic protocols. The path to the peace tent seemed endless. Every step brought him closer to the point of no return in history. The Modocs crossed the imaginary boundary, separating their stone fortress from the open space of negotiations. The wind whistled around the sharp edges of the cliffs, as if warning of an approaching storm. Members of the commission had already come out to meet them, greeting the resistance leaders with hope for a successful resolution to the crisis. Thus began the very scene that would forever remain etched in memory as the most tragic moment of the era. Internal conflict within the community led to an external explosion that shook the entire country. The council's decision became a death sentence, not only for the Peace Commission, but also for the Modocs themselves. In the next chapter, you'll learn exactly what happened under the tent canopy on that cold April morning. This scene was the culmination of tensions that had been building for months in the lava fields. We'll examine in detail the final minutes before diplomacy gave way to despair. What happened next forever dashed any chance of peaceful coexistence. As described at the very beginning, the participants in this historic meeting gathered around a campfire near the peace tent. The wind swept through the valley, forcing General Kenby and Father Thomas to wrap themselves more tightly in their heavy woolen coats. Kintpuash sat across from the general, his eyes hidden in the shadows, his posture betraying extreme tension. Beside him stood his comrades, their hands nervously clutching weapons hidden beneath their clothes. The negotiations began with a reiteration of their old positions. The general demanded unconditional surrender, while the Modoc leader asked for his land. Kenby spoke calmly, confident that the prolonged siege had already broken the will of the resistance. He sincerely believed that he was offering the indigenous people the best possible option given the current political realities. Kintpuash responded reservedly, but his words conveyed an unshakable determination to remain on the shores of Lake Tell. The dialogue went in circles, bringing the sides no closer to any constructive solution to the problem. Kintpuash's gun misfired when he first pulled the trigger, giving General Kenby a second to realize what was happening. On the second try, the revolver fired, ending the American general's life forever, amid the cold rocks of the wasteland. At that very moment, other soldiers rushed to attack Father Thomas and the other stricken members of the Peace Commission. The brief massacre lasted only a few minutes, bringing this diplomatic dialogue to a close with the most terrible and irreversible tragedy. America lost the only general to die in this manner during the Indian Wars of the 19th century. The troops once again surrounded the lava fields, but this time they proceeded much more cautiously and methodically. The soldiers advanced step by step, building small stone shelters before each new push. The artillery fired continuously at the Modocs' presumed positions, preventing them from moving freely across open terrain. The army cut off access to Lake Tule, depriving the citadel's defenders of the ability to replenish their external water supplies. The siege ring was closing in relentlessly, turning the stone fortress into a death trap for the exhausted people inside. Inside the lava tubes, life was becoming increasingly unbearable due to the constant shortage of fresh water and food. The psychological pressure from the relentless artillery fire began to break the morale of even the most steadfast warriors. Disagreements within the tribe flared up with renewed intensity, now against the backdrop of fear of inevitable defeat. Some warriors began to accuse Kintpuash of having brought the army's wrath upon them through his actions. Leadership crumbled before their eyes, giving way to the panic and despair of people driven into a corner. Kintpuash continued to organize the defense, trying to hold back the soldiers' advance in the most dangerous sections of the terrain. His tactical genius still allowed him to deal painful blows to the enemy, but the forces were too unevenly matched. He was fighting not for victory, but to buy one more day for his loved ones. Realizing the inevitability of the end, he sought opportunities to safely evacuate his family from the line of fire. A fateful meeting by the campfire bore fruit, leaving the Modocs with nothing but the right to one last battle. The tragedy at the peaceful tent became the turning point beyond which there was no turning back. The decision, made under the pressure of circumstances, determined the fate of this unique resistance in the lava fields. In the next chapter, you'll learn how the U.S. Army managed to finally break through the citadel's defenses. We'll examine the tactic of cutting off the water supply, which proved to be far more effective than artillery shells. This method forced the defenders to make the most desperate and hopeless decisions. The reality is that the fortress fell not to an assault, but to thirst. General Davis employed a tactic of methodical suffocation, cutting off the Modocs from their main hidden source of fresh water. Soldiers captured strategically important high ground around the caves containing the reservoirs, establishing permanent observation posts there. Any attempt by the warriors to approach the water was met with heavy fire, making it physically impossible to replenish their supplies. Nature, which had protected the indigenous people for so long, now became a silent witness to their agonizing decline. Without water, life in the dusty, dry lava tubes quickly became an unbearable ordeal for everyone. Women gave their last drops of moisture to their crying children, while the warriors lost the strength to put up active resistance. Kintpuash saw the plight of his people and realized that the stone citadel had finally lost its purpose. Holding onto the impregnable cliffs at the cost of his people suffering from dehydration was pointless and cruel to the community. The leader made the difficult decision to leave the safe fortifications and attempt to break through the army's encirclement. On the night of April 15th, the Modocs carried out a secret retreat that was incredible in its audacity and organization. Leaving their campfires burning to deceive the enemy, the entire community slipped silently away through a deep crevice to the south. The soldiers, confident in the reliability of their blockade, did not even suspect that the enemy was slipping away right under their noses. In the morning, the army launched a massive assault on the citadel, expecting fierce resistance for every stone and every tunnel. The troops stormed into the central hollow of the camp, but found only emptiness and abandoned household items. Former comrades in arms, who knew Kintpuash's tactics and routes inside and out, quickly led the army to his trail. Trapped in the Clear Lake Canyon, the Modoc leader was left with only a handful of his most loyal followers. Their ammunition was running out, their clothing had become worn out, and their physical strength was completely exhausted. To continue resisting would have meant dooming the remaining people, who were hiding in a cave, to certain death. Kintpuash laid down his arms on June 1st, 1873, bringing to an end one of the most incredible standoffs of the 19th century. As he stepped out to face the American soldiers, he maintained the incredible dignity befitting a true leader of his people. He did not ask for mercy for himself. His only condition was the safety of his exhausted people. Kintpuash declared that his legs could no longer carry him across this land. His journey, which had begun with a desire to live in peace on his native shores, ended under the watchful eye of a convoy. The great strategist of the lava fields acknowledged his defeat in the face of a superior military machine and the betrayal of those closest to him. A swift military tribunal awaited the captured leaders, the outcome of which had been predetermined from the very beginning. Kintpuash and several of his loyal followers suffered the harshest punishment for the incident at the peace tent. The traitors who had betrayed their leader were set free, yet another example of fate's cruel irony. The Modoc leader met his end calmly, like a man who had long since come to terms with the inevitability of his demise. His final chapter was written, bringing an entire era in the history of the struggle for their homeland to a close. The stony wastelands lay deserted, retaining only the cold winds and deep scars from the explosions of artillery shells. The hero's journey had come to an end, leaving behind only legends of incredible courage and tactical genius. In the next and final chapter, we will summarize this historical phenomenon and assess its scale. You will learn the astronomical cost of this campaign to the U.S. government. These figures will make you take a fresh look at the balance of power in that distant war. The secret that will change the military industry lies in the mathematics of this incredible conflict. The war against the Modocs became one of the most expensive campaigns in the history of the 19th century U.S. Army. The government spent more than $500,000 to suppress the resistance of just 50 armed warriors per enemy combatant. This sum was absolutely unprecedented for that historical period. The Army maintained hundreds of soldiers, providing for their logistics under the most challenging conditions for over 6 months. American casualties also proved disproportionately high compared to the actual size of the enemy force. Dozens of soldiers and officers were left to lie forever among the sharp basalt rocks of the lava wastelands. The siege demonstrated the complete failure of classical military doctrine. When confronted with guerrilla tactics in a unique landscape, the Army realized that technological superiority does not guarantee victory over a motivated defender who knows every inch of his land. This experience forced military strategists to rethink their approaches to training soldiers for unconventional combat conditions. Kintpuash's journey reflected the tragic fate of many Native American peoples of that era. He sought to strike a balance between diplomacy and resistance while fighting for the right to live on his own land. His tactical genius in organizing the defense of the citadel has gone down in the history of military art as a prime example. However, internal conflicts within the tribe and the impossibility of standing up to the massive state apparatus sealed his downfall. The leader sacrificed himself so that his people might avoid total annihilation in the flames of a senseless war. When analyzing the events of those years, historians are amazed by the level of self-organization demonstrated by this small group of indigenous people. Without maps, compasses, or centralized supplies, They built a perfect system of logistics and effective defense. They utilized natural resources with a level of ingenuity that was beyond the reach of educated American engineers. This conflict became a striking example of how quality of training and motivation can overcome numerical superiority. The Modoc's genius for survival is still studied today by experts in extreme adaptation in the wilderness. It is important to understand that this story is not merely about battles and tactical maneuvers in a rocky desert. It is a profound drama about choice, a leader's responsibility, and the gravity of the consequences of the decisions made. Kintpuash demonstrated that true courage lies not only in the willingness to resist, but also in attempts to negotiate. His fatal mistake was driven by a desperate desire to preserve the unity of his people at any cost. He lost the campaign, but his name remains a symbol of unyielding will and incredible love for his homeland. The Modoc's experience proved that any terrain can become a formidable weapon in the hands of a skilled defender. Fog, sharp rocks, and lava tubes worked more seamlessly than any army brigade of the time. The U.S. military learned hard lessons from this confrontation, paying for them with long months of grueling trials. The war in the lava fields will forever remain a unique precedent in the history of the colonization of the American continent. It revealed the limits of a regular army's capabilities in the unconventional and extreme conditions of the wilderness. Today, we can look back and objectively assess the scale of the events that unfolded in Northern California. We see not merely defenders, but brilliant strategists who defended their homes with incredible courage. Their story deserves respect, an in-depth study, as an outstanding example of the resilience of the human spirit. The memory of those 53 warriors lives on in every stone of the lava wastelands, serving as a reminder of the price of freedom. This legacy teaches us to understand the full complexity and multifaceted nature of the historical process. We have traced the difficult path of a small nation that managed to challenge a massive and powerful state apparatus. Their defense in the lava fields will remain one of the most striking examples of tactical genius and endurance. This story shows how a deep understanding of nature and incredible willpower can work true miracles. Do you agree? Please share your thoughts on this. Every opinion is valuable. In this video, we trace the incredible journey of Kintpuash and his people, who transformed the lava fields into an impregnable fortress. Their story is a profound drama about the search for peace, the weight of leadership, and a desperate struggle for the right to exist. The Modoc warriors proved that a deep understanding of nature and tactical skill can hold back the onslaught of a massive military machine. This episode forever changed our understanding of human capabilities under extreme defensive conditions. Please suggest topics in the comments for future videos that you'd like to see on our channel. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new in-depth explorations of the fascinating history of indigenous peoples.